to be fair, like with AI coming out, it now of course enables a lot of new things.
Yeah.
So I personally think it is okay, like if you're now brainstorming ideas, to think like, oh hey, what are things that we can do with AI?
Yeah.
But once you actually get to a problem, like you need to completely forget the whole AI thing,
Yeah.
and you need to 100% focus on the problem. Like, what problem are you solving? What problem does the user have? There's this famous quote of the founder of Waze. He always says, fall in love with the problem, not the solution.
Hey, Luca here. Welcome to a new episode of the Refactoring podcast, where every 2 weeks we interview a world-class tech leader. Today's guest is Kevin Smith, who is co-founder of Snipd, one of the world's most popular podcast apps. With Kevin, we talked about his journey in tech, starting from quantitative finance and then running an AI team in a high-growth startup, up to actually founding one with Snipd. Then we segued into talking about Snipd itself and what are the technical challenges of working with AI models all the time. And finally, we discussed the future of learning, what are Kevin's favorite podcasts, what makes them good, and how AI enables personalized learning at scale. So let's dive right into the action. Hi, Kevin, welcome, and thank you so much for being here with us today.
Hi, Luca. Thanks for having me.
So, Kevin, you are the co-founder of Snipd, which is a popular AI-powered podcast app loved by myself, I have to say, and some of my very best friends. So we usually like to start these chats by asking our guests about their journey in tech and how did they get into tech. And I think in your case might be particularly interesting because if I'm not mistaken, you have a degree in quantitative finance, right?
Yes, that is absolutely correct. So I actually originally studied basically mathematics and economics,
Yeah.
and that then came together for quantitative finance. So it's basically the um, the people who build the mathematical models to understand the stock market,
Yeah.
the risk assessment of, for example, derivatives and equities, all of these complicated financial products that people have invented over time for various reasons. Um, yeah, but I mean, for me, like one thing was like what I always loved doing there was like the mathematical modeling,
Yes.
working with data and having math understand what the data is saying and give me something usable.
Yeah.
And that was like, interestingly enough, at the time I didn't realize that, but at the end of my studies, a really good friend of mine who's now actually one of my co-founders at Snipd, he introduced me to this new, well, at the time for me, new field called machine learning.
Yeah.
And suddenly, I mean, this was like the whole field was just about this, just about taking basically mathematics, applying it to data, and now you get intelligent models that understand the data and do things for you. So it was like it really drilled down to the core part of what I actually enjoyed from my studies, but it
Yeah.
was all about that. So
Yeah.
yeah, I that was the that's what actually led me to, in the end, like I think a year later or something like that, like quit my job at a big bank and join an early stage tech startup such that I could do machine learning and
Yeah.
AI every day.
Oh, love this. But so what year was that, more or less?
So I think the first time I came into contact with machine learning, I think it was 2014.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
11 years
Yeah.
ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Love that. I mean, way before it was cool, we can say, before the whole craze. So did you expect this like massive tipping point with ChatGPT? Like, was it in the air, let's say, for insiders, for people like you who worked on that, or did it really catch everyone off guard?
So I think I think it definitely caught everyone off guard. Like
Yeah.
that is, I think, undeniable. Even the people working on it themselves were caught off guard. But I think just saying that doesn't make justice to what had happened the 10 years before.
Yeah.
Like I think the starting point of all of it, I think it was actually 2012. Maybe I'll get the dates
Yeah.
wrong, but that was sort of that so-called AlexNet moment where there was a big breakthrough in deep learning, like where you would use neural networks and train it on a lot of data, or something that at the time was considered a lot of data.
Yeah.
And you had impressive results. And if you saw that, like every year, every 2 years, like these models and these research results, they just kept improving, like almost exponentially. So from that perspective, for a lot of people in the field, including myself, it was clear that like this is coming. It's getting better and better.
Yes.
And that was actually also for myself. Like we started Snipd before the whole ChatGPT hype.
Yes.
And one of the trigger points was actually a research paper by Facebook, like the Facebook AI team, where they applied some of the biggest technical innovations from the text space that was called NLP at the time. So basically what these now we call LLMs. They used that and applied the same logic, the same ideas on the area of audio, of speech, to do speech to text. And they worked almost exactly as well as on text.
Yes.
And that was sort of when I realized, like, wait, like all of this progress that we've seen now in text, all of this will now just happen in audio as well.
Yes.
And basically, like it will explode. But so that I knew, but like no way I could have predicted like what then actually happened.
Yeah, actually, fun story. I remember I got my master's in computer science in 2011, and I remember before that, when I was studying for a course about artificial intelligence, and the professor explained like neural networks to us because they were well known, even back then and way before that. And I remember him saying, "This is the right idea and the right foundational idea, but we just need more compute." And to make it work. And when you're a student, you hear that and you think, yeah, whatever. I mean, and instead give it like 20 years or 15 years, and it was definitely right. I mean, right time.
100%. Yeah. Wow.
Hey, before we continue, I want to tell you that today's episode is brought to you by Swarmia, the engineering intelligence platform that serves some of the best software companies in the world, from startups like Lovable and Superhuman to scale-ups like Miro and Webflow, all the way to Fortune 500s. By combining data from all the tools your product and engineering teams are already using, Swarmia gives everyone in your organization visibility into where engineering time is going, the progress of cross-team initiatives, and the bottlenecks that are slowing teams down. So what makes Swarmia special is that it combines proven software development metrics with feedback from developer experience surveys. It's a platform engineers actually want to use, not just another monitoring tool they have to tolerate. And instead of throwing you into a bottomless pit of data, Swarmia automatically identifies patterns and delivers actionable signals to you, complete with practical steps you can take to improve. So get 20% off your first year by booking a demo at swarmia.com/refactoring. So, and how did you transition into a founder? I mean, did Snipd start like as a side gig, or did you take some time off, like a sabbatical? How was it?
Yeah, I think now looking back, it's always easy to look back and then realize the moments in your life that got you here.
Yes.
I think it actually started again with the same friend that got me into machine learning.
Yes.
So he was actually, while we were still studying, so this is a long time ago, he actually joined the entrepreneur club at the university. And that was the first moment that I got in contact with that.
Yeah.
And when I realized that, hey, I want to do this machine learning stuff and not work at a big bank and do this quant things.
Yes.
It was through him that they were organizing a startup speed dating, as it was called.
Okay.
So you had startups there and they were looking for employees. So I thought I will go there and I will see like what are the cool machine learning startups. I wanna go there. And that's actually where I found my next employer. So this was before Snipd,
Yes.
what I did
Okay.
before Snipd. So I joined an early stage tech startup where I was actually able to build up the AI team
Okay.
from scratch. So they were still very early in that area. And that was that was sort of my gateway drug into
Yeah.
the startup world, the entrepreneur world. And for anyone listening who, is interested in maybe becoming a founder in the future, I think that is actually one of the best ways of learning
Yeah.
how this works, how it functions, how to think, and also to have the contacts, is to actually join an early stage startup that is doing well
Yeah.
and grow with them, enjoy the ride. And if everything works out great, then actually that startup will have an exit. And suddenly there's a founder there who now has a lot of money and often is interested in investing in other startups. And then you can turn around and start your own startup and ask him to invest.
Totally, I totally agree. And I mean, I can only confirm from my experience because I founded a startup and then we eventually sold it to a larger company. And then one of my employees started another startup, actually in the AI space for e-commerce. And I angel invested in that. So it's exactly,
Nice.
it's exactly what you said. And so then you, at some point, you left the startup or the startup got sold and you start Snipd.
Yeah, so the startup did get acquired
Yeah.
at some point. I stayed around a little bit longer, but at some point it was clear like I needed something new.
Yeah.
And for me, like that, I would say, so I worked for that early stage startup for 5 years, and just over that time, it just like grew more and more that I realized like, hey, this is what I love, and
Yeah.
I need to just like take that
Yes.
jump into the deep end. How that then really happened in detail. So I mean, I can maybe tell you a bit the story. So one pivotal moment was actually, again, the friend of mine who got me into machine learning, who got me into startups, and who is now my co-founder. Maybe to put a name to it, it's Ferdinand. Just if I reference him again in the conversation, maybe
We'll
that's
put
easier.
him in the show notes. Yes.
Yes, for sure. So him and I, we actually regularly met and were chatting about startup ideas that we had and what we could maybe do together. And one day we had this idea of, hey, we could apply this to, actually it started with, we could apply this to meeting notes, or like
Yeah.
to create meeting notes from video calls and stuff like that. And this idea evolved a bit, and then in the end we actually ended up doing this for podcasts, because we use podcasts for learning, and we were just so much more excited about this.
Yeah.
And at the time we had, but at the time we had, full-time jobs, quite busy. So the solution to like carve out some time for us was to participate in a hackathon.
Yeah.
So here in Zurich at the time, there was Europe's largest hackathon. So we said, come on, we joined that hackathon for a full weekend and we just try out some of these ideas. We hack something together.
Yeah.
So long story short, we participate, we pitch on stage after like hacking through the entire night. So completely like almost asleep on stage. And what we built was a search engine to search within podcasts in natural language.
Oh, wow.
And we had a great pitch. Like we took as an example this famous episode of a Joe Rogan episode where Elon Musk smokes a joint.
Yes.
And this is like a 2-hour episode. So we were on stage and we would just type into our search engine smoking weed or something like that. And it would find the exact moment and we would play, and we hooked it up to YouTube to have the video as well. It would go full screen and there he was like smoking the joint.
Yeah.
So it was a great demo that we had. And long story short, we actually won the hackathon. And this was super exciting, right? We win the hackathon, we got a little bit of money, but the actual most valuable thing that happened was that afterwards, a lot of the participants that saw us pitch on stage they actually came to us and asked us like, hey, can I use this? Can I like, or they came
So
with other ideas
exciting.
like this is actually not the problem I have, but I have this
Yes.
other issue with podcasts. Do you think what you build could be adapted for this? And that's really when we notice like, hey, it's not just us. There are other people out there who
Yeah.
have these challenges with podcasts, and we can solve them with AI.
Yeah, I absolutely love this story. I mean, I can feel like I can imagine the energy that you get from, people coming to you by themselves and just asking, "Can I use this? Can you build this for me?" Like it's insane. And I can totally relate because I think for a long time I've not been like a big podcast listener or even like big YouTube channel watcher of this like Joe Rogan, Lex Friedman, these ones because they were so long and they felt like inaccessible when it comes to good retention, taking notes. It was so cumbersome, with respect to reading an article. So I just wouldn't bother. And I think this is something that Snipd and AI also in general, I mean, being able to translate between these like modes between audio and text, video to text, has changed the game completely. So I can totally see how, I mean, Snipd has changed completely the way I consume podcasts. So I have to tip my hat and tell you straight away. So segueing into
That's cool.
Snipd, can you let's introduce this. So can you tell us what Snipd is? What is your elevator pitch for it? What problem it solves and how?
Yeah. So Snipd is an AI-powered podcast app
Yeah.
for people who listen to podcasts to learn. So I think very much like your audience, these are people who see podcasts as one of the largest knowledge sources with you can listen to interesting people who come on and have some insights. Hopefully I also have some insights today. And our job at Snipd is to make this as easy as possible for you and as
Yeah.
as effective as possible. So we have a lot of AI features in the app, and I'm happy to go into all of them. But I think the most important one, and also where our name comes from, is whenever you hear an amazing insight, you can just triple tap your headphones, and our AI summarizes the insight that you just heard and saves it together with the original clip.
Yeah.
And this is now saved in your knowledge library. We call this a snip,
Yeah.
and we call the process of this snipping. So that's where the name comes from. And now this snip, you can come back to it at any time. You can sync it with your notes app. You can share it with friends. And with this, basically over time, you're building up your knowledge library just by listening to podcasts.
Yeah, I absolutely love this. And so in my mind, Snipd is like the perfect example of the AI enabled product. So something that makes such good use of AI. And I speak with many people, many engineers, for example, who feel this kind of FOMO of building something with AI, right? But there's this whole debate on the fact that many AI products are just, LLM wrappers. They have no mode. It's hard to build something with AI because you might be swept away by a new model. As a founder of an AI product, how do you feel about this? I mean, are there things that you do intentionally to navigate this in a way that makes sense strategically for Snipd? What are your feelings?
Yeah, one of the concepts that I like very much is I look at AI as sort of the new CPU.
Mm,
So if you think about it, when Facebook came along, when Airbnb came along, there was no one that said, hey, Facebook will not be successful because they don't have the best CPU, or they will be successful because they are running on the best CPUs.
yeah,
Um, and the same way it is basically today that AI is accessible to everyone. It is commoditized. That's the word that I was looking for. So you have to think about what is it that is your moat, and all of the moats that we had before, they still exist. Network effects, data effects, brand, like all of this is, or like counter positioning. All of this still exists, and I prefer looking at it like that rather than oh, we have the best AI and that's why we're going to win. If this is the only reason why people come to you, then yes, then probably the next model might sweep you off your feet, or others will be able to replicate it once the next model comes out and your moat is gone. And yeah, once you see it like that, then it's just another tool in your toolbox to create a product that people love, that creates value for people. And that was the same before AI.
Yeah, I totally agree. So what I'm getting is AI should like blend as another part of your tech stack, but you should not think, I want to build an AI product. You should think what problems you're going to solve, and then AI is a part of your tool belt, let's say, no
Yeah,
more, no less.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I mean, there are, of course, to be fair, like with AI coming out, it now, of course, enables a lot of new things.
yeah,
So I personally think it is okay, like if you're now brainstorming ideas, to think like, oh, hey, what are things that we can do with AI?
yeah,
But once you actually get to a problem, like you need to completely forget the whole AI thing,
yeah,
and you need to 100% focus on the problem. Like, what problem are you solving? What problem does the user have? There's this famous quote of the founder of Waze. He always says, fall in love with the problem, not the solution.
yes.
Yeah.
Love that quote, one of my favorites. So another thing I wanted to ask is that you've been working on Snipd for some years now, even like as you said, even before this uber powerful LLMs came out. So what are the toughest technical challenges that you had to solve to make Snipd work and Snipd viable?
So I think, let's say one of the most interesting technical challenge
Yes. Yes.
that is still ongoing, and I think will remain with us for a while, is how to handle the randomness of these AI models. Because the coding in the past was very different, right? And all of us engineers, we have trained ourselves to think in a certain way, to understand code and how to organize code. And it's all about things being deterministic.
Yes.
And now you have this new element in there that is just, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes it creates something completely different. So for me, the analogy that I like using, how to think about that, is much more not thinking about it as code, but actually thinking about it as if you had a handful of interns at your disposal.
Yeah.
And actually, you can even think of it as having more than a handful of interns. You can have 1,000 interns at your disposal. Like, how would you handle this task in the best way?
Yeah.
And this just starts out with, I mean, I give it to one intern and the intern will do it and he will come back to me and have the result, right? So if that works, you can test that. If that works, great. If that doesn't work, well, what do? Well, I have more interns. Well, okay, I'll let 3 interns do the same task. They come back to me, and now I have a 4th intern that judges which result is the best one, right? Or can I, if I'm if it's not good enough, if the 4th intern says, hey, this is not good enough, I can send it back to them. Hey, do it again. So all of these things all of these processes that we're actually already quite familiar with from just working with other people,
Yes.
these are the tactics that we now deploy with AI models. And then suddenly all of these things start to work. Or at least you get from, it working 50% of the time to suddenly working 90% of the time, 95% of the time. And then the rest after that, there, I guess it really depends on your product. I mean, we there have a big advantage of being, in general, first of all, a startup, and being a startup that has AI, like almost anything in our app is like somehow AI infused. So our users know that. So that, if something doesn't work correctly somewhere, like users now have this understanding of, okay, this is an AI app, like this bio of the guest was generated by AI. So if it's a little bit weird or off, or if it's missing once, then they understand, right?
Yeah.
So this is then, but this is very dependent on your specific product. How much of that risk can you take? But if you can live with a little bit there, then yeah, with some of these tactics that I described earlier, you can handle this uncertainty.
Yeah, I absolutely love this specific challenge. So when you talk about randomness, is it more for your use case, for example, more about hallucinations, or is it more about even just returning things in the wrong format and not following through your instructions? What is it?
So this is something that has also evolved over time,
Yeah,
actually, and I think it will actually continue to evolve. So maybe I can tell a bit the history if people are interested.
sure.
Like when these first APIs came out, one of the big problem was actually getting it to return the result in the right format.
Yeah,
So we as coders, we want to do something with the output. So usually we wanted to have it in JSON.
yeah,
And JSON has a certain format and has to be formatted correctly, right? And there are, of course, a lot of strings in there.
yeah,
And the string might also have a quotation, so that has to be escaped, and
yeah,
all of these things. So that was one thing where we just, we try to parse JSON in a lenient way, try to recover if there were errors in there. But at the end of the day,
So sorry, when you say the first APIs that came out, we are talking of GPT-3, for example. This is the
yeah,
age.
like
Yeah.
the moment when we started with GPT-3. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
So before GPT 3.5. Like with GPT 3.5, that was then the moment when we started using it much, much more.
Yeah.
But we actually already were running, with GPT-3. But just to finish that example,
Yes.
like we did a lot. Again, for us, it was still new. So in the beginning, what do, right? You get this result and you need to handle it. So we wrote all of this code to parse JSON, fix these errors, until at some point we realized, like, wait, no, it's just pushing it back to the intern and saying, hey, this is wrong, like fix
Fix
it.
it. Yes.
Exactly. And then you get it back and suddenly, like 90% of the cases that were wrong were fixed. Yeah, and so that was a problem in the beginning, which luckily today is not an issue anymore because all of
Yeah.
these models have JSON mode and structured output. Today, I would say we don't have a lot of problems with hallucinations because mainly thanks to that we always, almost in anything that we do, we provide a lot of context. The episode in itself is like the context, and it refers back to that. For us, it's then often more the case of, is it good output? So to maybe give you an example, for end of last year, we did a Snipd wrapped,
Yeah.
and for this we wanted to provide some fun things for the user that relate to what they've been listening to in over the course of the year.
Yeah.
So we did a couple of things. One thing was we created a personality, the AI invented a personality based on what you listened to. We had a learning scorecard where you could see 5 topics that you learned a lot about,
Yeah.
and you got a little score. And the third thing was we extracted a quote, like one quote that was supposed to be something great from everything that you've listened to, and something that is related to like a topic that
Yeah.
you have listened to a lot. And the first version that we ran there was, I don't know how often, but let's just say 50% of the time the quote was just super boring. And that is like, the output is correct. Like the model is doing everything correct. It is a quote,
Yeah.
it is extracted word for word. It's in the right JSON format. But then you just read it and it's like, why would you select that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So these are sort of more the problems that we have now. The solution to that, if you're interested, was actually exactly what I mentioned earlier. Like we actually asked multiple models to extract the quote. So we had
Yeah.
multiple candidates, and then we had a final judge LLM look at all of the quotes and say, this is the best one.
Yeah, I would have asked you exactly that because when you talk about quality, one of the things that puzzle me the most is how do you make sure that you're actually improving the quality of the output when it's so like non-deterministic, and let's say you want to try to swap a model under the hood and use this instead of that. uh, how do you judge whether you are actually improving the output or not, given that the content is all the time like kind of user generated, comes from external things? How do you judge that?
Yeah. So I'd love to be able to give you like the perfect answer here and like, we have this amazing framework and everything automated. But the truth is, so this is mostly what we call vibe evaluations.
Yeah, I guess.
So yeah, it's us using the new model, comparing it, and often it's then also like, if these tests are positive,
Yeah,
then we just deploy it and we see what our users say. And we also, the good thing is like we're all, we're users of our own product. So we have had cases where we had a new model, we tried it out a bit, it seemed great, we deployed it, and then we used it ourselves. And after a couple of days, we're like, oh my God, like this is crap.
yeah,
So in that case, we didn't even need to have users complain about it, and then we just reverted. Yeah.
yeah. But I mean, this is the perfect answer that I get from everybody. I mean, I don't think anybody has like a magic framework to test these things yet. Then I don't know if
Yeah.
it will ever come out. So we have spoken about the tech a little bit, but has AI and AI processes like infiltrated also how you work with your like product and engineering team? Has it changed the way you work with your team as an, let's say, AI first company, quote unquote?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. I mean, I don't think we do anything more special than the other
Yeah,
companies out there. But I mean, for us, AI is now part of every step, right? It starts with the brainstorming. If we have ideas to brainstorm, like I don't just write them down. I start chatting about them with ChatGPT, right?
yeah,
And I ask them like, challenge me on this. Like, why is this a good idea? Why is this a bad idea? Come up with 5 alternatives. It's about analyzing user feedback, right? We get a lot of user feedback, like feature requests or just general feedback. It's very time consuming to read all of that, right? And often like
yeah,
then you can't do that. So you pipe all of that in and say like, hey, what are new trends that I'm not seeing, together with actual examples, and then you can use that to deep dive further. Yeah, then of course a big area is coding, right? We all use Cursor, um, and basically you have ChatGPT, or some of us prefer Claude. You just have it open on the side, right?
yeah.
And this has enabled us a lot. Like we just recently introduced video to Snipd. So now for some podcasts, you can, if you create a snip, for example, you can share that snip with the video clip, and you can explore episodes through video snips to scroll through. Like for this, we had to build all of this video infrastructure and video streaming. None of us had done that before. But the way that you do that, you just have now this expert that you can always ask, like, hey, we want to have video there. Like, what is like the best in practice technology or protocols to use?
Yeah,
And we then developed all of this in, I don't know, like
yeah.
4 to 6 weeks or something.
Yeah, because you know what, especially when it comes to AI coding, this is a question that I ask these times basically to every single guest. That is, how has AI coding changed the way you work with your team? Whether it had big impact or a small impact, and the answers are fall pretty much in two camps. There are those who say this has been like transformative for us, and those who say, yeah, but 10% of productivity. I mean, not a big deal, right? So where do you fall? It is more in the transformative and game changing camp, or more in the like incremental one?
I would say like right now I would put ourselves in the middle.
In the middle.
But
That's
all of us
wise.
very optimistic
Yeah.
on the like we're leaning towards the transformative, but of course there are also like still the issues that some things, like most of it is about context, right? The AI doesn't always have the context, or it's difficult to put all of the context or all of the data in there such that it understands it. But these are all things that you can see with every iteration of products that are out there, that this is being solved more and more. So it's helping more and more, us more and more. Like there's definitely more productivity increase than 10% for us. Like definitely. And it's not just like for me. I think for me it's I think less about like the being faster. Like for me, being 10% more productive sounds a bit like, I'm 10% faster. But it's sometimes even like just being able to do things that before I was not able to do, or I wouldn't have started because I have no idea about this field and there's no one sitting around me who's like an expert in this. But now we just tackle it, like for example, this video. And then finally there are really these cases where, okay, this is something that has not been possible before. Like we did a redesign of our landing page. Just to give you a bit of an understanding, like we are a team of 4 people. We're 4 engineers. Only one of us is actually has a lot of experience for websites, like coding websites. But it was then actually someone else who prototyped our entire landing page, and just did that with V0, just by prompting, giving all of the input, and we ended up with having a complete landing page. And then only then at the end we gave it to the person in our team who's actually very experienced in coding websites, and he then took that and polished it. Like he still put work into it, but this whole prototyping phase, almost to like let's say 80%, was just done by someone who has never coded a website in his life.
I totally agree, and this is like a recurring type of story that I hear, that is, when you look at people who are the more enthusiastic about AI usage in the developer process, it's usually not about individual developers being able to do like more of the same. And I mean, you're a big backend developer, you're able to write more backend code, but it's rather than, let's say you have a full stack feature and now you get this like everyone has this basic proficiency on all the stack, right? And so they can prototype something and submit the PRs all by themselves, and you don't have to coordinate like 4 people to ship a simple thing. Is that an enabler like for you in this way? So engineers are more empowered and they go after things by themselves as opposed to coordinating a bunch of guys.
100%.
Love that. Exciting times, really. So another thing that I want to talk about is like learning itself. I'm a writer. I spend a lot of time reading, listening to things, researching, taking notes, and I read a great quote from you saying that 3 out of 4 podcast listeners say they listen to learn, right, as opposed to pure entertainment. So of course podcasts are big on learning itself, so is Snipd. So how do you think people can make the most out of AI and modern tools for learning, out of Snipd, or out of, I don't know if you have any workflows or processes to make sure that you discover the right thing, you retain the right ideas, and you learn more?
So when if we're now speaking specifically about podcasts, and Snip, but even if you're not using Snip, one of the things that I personally can very much recommend to anyone is, we live in this world where we consume so much. It's not just podcasts, right? We consume so many YouTube videos, we consume so many blog posts, and on Twitter, some hot takes, the next contrarian idea. So we consume. But the problem is we take so little time to actually think about the things that we consume. So it just goes in one ear and out the other, or in one eye and out the other if you're reading or watching it. So one thing that I like doing with podcasts is for every single podcast that I've listened to, I like to force myself to get to one single most important takeaway. And this is a process. This can be 30 seconds. You usually don't even need longer. It can also be longer. This is up to you. But just to go through this almost a forcing function in your brain to decide, hey, what was actually the most important thing for me? Not for anyone else, not like what's the most important in the world, like just for me right now in this moment, what's something that I want to take away?
Mm.
And of course, if you use Snipd, this becomes a much easier process because you can see the snips, the insights that you've snipped. You can also see what the AI has deemed to be valuable insights of the episode. So it's very quick to quickly go through that and say, hey, this was it. But even if you don't use Snipd, like just taking that time, it's incredible how much more you retain and how much more you like learn for not just remembering facts, but learning something that was valuable for you.
Yeah, so it's an intentional step. You have to be
Yeah.
intentional about not just listening or hearing the whole thing and then it's gone, but stop for a minute and write down or highlight. I mean, use apps, but write it down.
Yeah. So this is one tip that I always love sharing. I think your question was also more with like even going beyond Snipd and podcasts, just AI in general. I think one of the special things with AI is now we have these entities that know so much, right? We just spoke about it with the coding. It's like having an expert next to you. So I think when it comes to if somebody is interested in learning something, today you actually can. And this can be just opening up ChatGPT and asking, hey, telling the model, I want to learn this, like,
Yeah.
please, can you help me? And then you go on that journey. And this is also, if you look at Snipd and one of the topics that we are excited about in the future, we know that so many people love doing that via audio. So this is, of course, one of the topics that we also want to enable in Snipd in the future, that you can go to Snipd and be like, hey, I want to learn about this topic. Or we already know from everything that you're listening to, hey, this is what you're interested in. And we can now guide you either to the correct episode, or if there is not a good episode on this specific question that you have, we can now actually generate a small
Yeah.
10-minute podcast for you that you can listen to. So yeah, this is the new world that we live in, and it's just about going out there and doing it.
Yeah, this is. I want to continue on the final thing that you said because I think it's so interesting. Do you think the future of learning in part is about creating this super personalized pieces of content, like a podcast just for you on this or that topic, created like on the fly by AI, or a custom article about this or that?
So I think my belief is that this will be a big and important part in the future, but it will not be the only thing. So if you look at, if we stay with podcasts, because podcast is this interesting thing, like I listen to podcasts to learn, but it's not like a lecture, I'm not listening to a teacher just ramble on about, this is what you need to know, blah, blah, blah. No, it's often there's this entertainment factor with it as well. Like I really enjoy learning, getting to know a person who's there as a guest and
Yes.
hearing about their experiences. Our conversation started like this as well, right? You asked me like, how did you even get there, right? From
Yes.
this studying something completely different, and suddenly you're a founder. So these are aspects that I strongly believe they will stay, right? So I think it will remain an important part in the future of listening to people being interviewed, hearing about a person who had a certain experience in their life that you
Yes.
want to know more about. And often, you then learn from between the lines. It's
Yes.
not just that they just come and say, hey, here is the insight, write that down. It's like, no, you hear, like everyone also hears something else in between these stories. And this will not go away, but it will definitely be, there will be this additive new field of podcasts being generated for you on the fly, just like you now can ask ChatGPT for an answer.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I don't think this is only about podcasts. I think writing and all kind of uh, creative outputs from humans will stay valuable for this part of creating a human connection between the creator and the consumer, the reader, the listener, and how the individual experience will resonate with people. And so I'm not one of those who think AI is going to replace like writers or all the content on the web. So I completely agree with you. So I wanted also to ask you, because I mean you work with podcasts every day, every single day, all day. So I have to ask this: what are your favorite podcasts right now?
So my some of my favorite podcasts. So in general, I find it always difficult to answer that question because I listen to like a lot of different shows, and every time I answer that question afterwards, like, oh, I should have mentioned this podcast, that podcast. But I can tell you some of my like the all-time favorites
Lately, you
that
can
I
say you
always
can
come back.
save yourself by saying lately I've
So
listened to this. Yeah.
so lately I've been listening to a lot of Diary of a CEO
Mm.
and Lenny's podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I think these two are lately sort of my favorite.
Okay.
But I have to mention some of my other favorites that I love listening to, like Founders podcast. What he does is every week he reads an autobiography of a famous entrepreneur, and then summarizes the insights that he heard. But it's not just a summary, it's really like his interpretation, and he relates it back to other founders and like tries to build these bridges like, hey, this here, what Steve Jobs is talking about, this is the exact same thing as what Michael Dell was talking about in this
Yeah.
different context. So he like distills basically and breaks it down to like what are the repeating stories. So this is a podcast that I love. Another one that I've been listening to is a Sub Club. This is from Revenue Cat. So anyone who's ever built a mobile subscription app will probably know the company called Revenue Cat, and they have an amazing podcast where they have founders on who also build mobile subscription apps, and they give you a lot of insights. Another one is Lex Friedman. I love Lex Friedman. He's, I think, like overall, like if you look at the last 4 years, the show that I've listened to the most. Modern Wisdom is another one. Yeah, you can see I could go on for a long time.
You can go on. And if you think about it, what makes a good podcast good? I mean, what makes these like your favorites? Are there like common traits that you can identify?
Yeah. So it depends a bit on which podcast. So there are podcasts where I think it's all about the guest. So
Yeah.
if I look at a Lex Friedman or also a Diary of a CEO, I think the most important part is that they are able to get on guests that have interesting insights and interesting story to tell. If I now look at a different podcast like Founders, or another one that I really love is Acquired. There, first of all, it is the topic, right? It's entrepreneurs, it's startups, but it has a lot to do with their personality, especially a podcast like Founders. Like if anyone hasn't checked it out, please do so. David Senra, he's the host. He has this drive inside
Yeah.
of him. Like he is obsessed. He is obsessed with learning from entrepreneurs, and he's obsessed with doing his podcast, and he will continue doing his podcast until he dies in, I don't know, 500 years. And you can just feel that in everything that he says and like how he dissects it, and he just loves it so much. And this is something that I feel for what I'm doing, and this like really resonates.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you have this drive inside of you as well, like listen to that podcast.
Love this, Kevin. I took so many notes from this like final segment of the chat about things that I have to catch up with and listen to next. Thank you so much for the recommendations.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me. Maybe one last thing that comes to mind.
Yes.
If anyone wants to try out Snipd, I'm very happy to provide you with a link that you can add to the show notes where users can try out our premium version for a month for free, just for anyone who now got interested in what we're doing at Snipd.
Thank you so much for this, Kevin. Super appreciated. We will put everything in the show notes. So thank you again for coming to the show, Kevin. It's been a great chat.
Thank you, Luca. Likewise.
Thank you so much for listening. If you found this chat valuable, you can subscribe to the show on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. Also, please consider giving us a rating or leaving a review, as that really helps other listeners find the show. You can find all past episodes and learn more about the show at refactoring.fm. See you in the next episode.